I want to talk to you guys a little bit about what's going on in this country, and in particularly what's going on in Texas. So I was listening this morning to one of my favorite radio talk show hosts here in Los Angeles, and he was talking about this Mexican national. I call him an illegal. The papers are calling him a Mexican national. But they're talking about this wetback illegal whose family came over here when he was 2 years old. And they never left, of course. And when he was 21 when he committed the crime, and the girl he raped was 16. And the Obama administration, let me just read the article to you guys so that you understand what I'm talking about. Texas executes Mexican killer. Obama administration has sought delay, saying case raises concerns about international treaty violations. A Mexican national was executed Thursday for the rape-slaying of a teenager after the U.S. Supreme Court turned down a White House-supported appeal to spare him in a death penalty case where Texas justice triumphed over international treaty concerns. Humberto Leal, 38, received lethal injection for the 1994 murder of a woman. She was fatally bludgeoned with a piece of asphalt. And by the way, his full name is Humberto Leal Garcia. Leal moved with his family from Monterrey, Mexico to the U.S. as a toddler. Police never told Leal following his arrest that he could seek legal assistance from the Mexican government under an international treaty, and his case had prompted appeals on what it could mean for other foreigners arrested in the U.S. and for Americans detained in other countries. His appeals lawyers said such assistance would have helped his defense. So when they're here illegally, by law, we're not supposed to ask them if they're here illegally when we want to get them out of the country. But when we want to save them from execution for crimes that they've admitted to committing, then all of a sudden we should treat them as if they're here illegally. Let's move on. Superior Court justices voted 5-4 to reject a stay. Thank goodness. They finally did something right. We are doubtful that it is ever appropriate to stay a lower court judgment in light of unenacted legislation. Our task is to rule on what the law is, not what it might eventually be. It says Leal's appeals, however, focused on legislation introduced last month in the U.S. Senate by Vermont Democrat, it would be a Democrat, wouldn't it, Patrick Leahy. Leahy's measure would bring the U.S. into compliance with the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations, a provision regarding the arrests of foreign nationals, and ensure court reviews for condemned foreigners to determine if the lack of consular help made a significant difference in the outcome of their cases, as if he wasn't already represented by his own defense attorney, as if some attorney or foreign representative would have been able to save his life, especially with the evidence weighed against him, especially with an eyewitness, his own brother, who made the police report saying that he had gotten information that his brother had come home with blood on him. Not to mention that this guy, this illegal alien, confessed to killing this girl. The article goes on to say, President Barack Obama's administration took the unusual step of intervening in a state murder case where Solicitor General Donald Verrilli Jr. last week joined Leal's appeal in asking the High Court to halt the execution and give Congress at least 6 months to consider Leal's bill. And this is why anybody who votes to keep President Obama back in office is a goddamn fool. Why is he appealing to these illegals? Why does he need to be friends with these illegals? Why is he insistent on keeping them in this country? Even when they're guilty of major horrendous crimes. He's insistent on keeping them alive. What is it about him? Just on this alone, I want him impeached. This is becoming more and more disgraceful. Not only does he want to give them amnesty, but he wants to save the ones that are guilty of crimes, polluting this country more with the vermin that crawls over from Mexico. The article goes on to say the legislation would give Mr. Leal an opportunity to demonstrate that with consular assistance, he likely would not have been convicted, let alone sentenced to death. When you confess to a rape and murder, you will be sentenced to death regardless of whether you had consular assistance or not. And they're trying to make this an issue as if this guy was somehow deprived of fair counsel, of fair representation. And he wasn't. He wasn't. He was given a lawyer just like everybody else. Just like every citizen in this country is entitled to legal representation. And if you cannot afford legal representation, someone will be appointed to you. This illegal wetback was given the same privilege. And they're still complaining. I don't get the mentality of the people in this country. And they're usually the higher ups. They're usually the kind of people that don't have to live around these people. They only see them when they come in and clean the house. They only see them when they come and mow the lawns. They don't have to live with them. They don't have to go into the neighborhoods where there's dog feces all over the place because they're too nasty to clean up behind their animals. Or there's dirty diapers all in the street or in their own front yards because they're too nasty and lazy to pick up behind themselves and keep their areas clean. They don't have to live among these people. They see them for an hour, maybe 2 hours a day. And then that's it. They send them back down the hill into the ghettos. They don't live with these people. So yeah, they're hoorahing and trying to keep them here. And meanwhile, everybody else who has to actually live amongst them, drive amongst them, suffers. And it's a damn shame. The article goes on to say Leal's attorneys had the support of the Mexican government. Of course they did. Of course they did. Those fucking wetbacks over there, of course they're going to support it. That's all they have to do is give their stamp of approval. They don't have to keep these people over there. You know? The Mexican government, by the way, the Mexican government wants those illegals to stay here. Because it's a passive aggressive way of conquering this country without having a full-blown war. See, there's two ways to conquer a country. One is You send all of your illegals over in mass quantities and have them infiltrate the country. And what that does is not only does it populate the country with the people that you want there to conquer that country, but it also drives away the citizens that are already there. Drives them to other countries or further parts of the nation. That's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is declaring a full-on war, which they probably don't want. They'd rather do it the passive-aggressive way. Just send them over into our country and then make us feel responsible for them. Their own government isn't responsible for them, but we have to be. We make accommodations. We make accommodations when we create brochures that have to have Spanish. Well, if you're in a country that speaks English, why the fuck do they have to print information in Spanish? What kind of shit is that? I've traveled to many parts of the world. Many parts. And I was in Spain once. I was in Barcelona. And I met a German man that had been living there for years. And I asked him if he spoke Spanish, and he said yes. And I said, why? Why did you learn to speak Spanish? He said, because I am in their country now. And I believe that when I am in another person's country, I should speak that language, the language of that country. And I said, you know what? I wish, to myself I said this, I wish those dirty, low-life illegals thought the same way this man does. But thanks to our government, they really don't have to, do they? No, because we make allowances. And the allowances that the government doesn't make, they force the private sector to make. So, you know, God forbid an illegal should walk into a business and not be able to read the information or not understand the information. Can you imagine? Can you imagine an illegal walking into a business and not being able to understand what's going on around them? So what? They just walk out. They walk out, or they figure out a way to understand what the fuck is going on around them. And believe me, I've seen it done. I used to work for a woman, a white woman, but she was damn good at her job in the legal field. And we had quite a few of them walk in who didn't speak English or claimed they don't speak English. Do you speak Spanish? And my boss told them, no, I don't speak Spanish, but I can help you. And she got more business from those people who claimed they did not understand or speak English. She got more business, more referrals from them than anybody. Why? Because she didn't make the accommodations, but she was damn good at what she did. She refused to speak to them in their language, but she was damn good at what she did. And they had to respect that. Now imagine if the United States government stopped making those type of accommodations. You're either going to stay here under our conditions or you go back home. I guarantee you an overwhelming percentage of them would stay anyways. And we wouldn't have to press one for fucking English. Leal's attorney had the support of the Mexican government and other diplomats who believed the execution should be delayed so his case would be thoroughly reviewed. Some also warned Leal's execution would violate the treaty provision and would endanger Americans abroad. I doubt it. Who's going to get in a huff because some wetback criminal was killed? Stephen Hoffman, an assistant attorney general, said the request for a reprieve to extend through the end of the current congressional term next January was audacious, and that evidence pointing to Leal's guilt was strong. At this point, it is clear that Leal Garcia is attempting to avoid execution by overwhelming the state and the courts with as many meritless lawsuits and motions as humanly possible. Simply put, a bill is not federal law. And because most bills introduced never become law, it is altogether unsurprising that bills are not afforded legal effect. So they're trying to extend this fucker's life, hoping that this bill becomes law, but not knowing if it will or not. Is his life really worth it? No. No. And 17 years on death row? Seriously? They should have executed his punk ass, rapist ass, murdering ass 10 years ago. It says the U.S. and the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights tried to inject themselves into the execution process, saying that Leal was never allowed to speak to a Mexican consulate at the time of his arrest. So now he had to get the special consulate at the time of his... Can you imagine? I mean, let's just think about this for a second. What are we doing here? Now we have to make special accommodations for illegal criminals because somehow they can't get fair and just representation here in America. And when they're here, they're somehow considered citizens, so they get all of the citizens' privileges, even though they're here illegally. But as soon as they commit a crime, then all of a sudden they're not citizens in the eyes of the law. Now they should be treated as illegals and given special accommodations because of that. What is this bullshit? What is this? I'm sitting here and I just can't believe what's going on in this country. It's so arbitrary, you know. If it's to save their life, then we have to treat them as illegals. But if we're trying to get them out of the country, we can't label them. We can't label them illegals when we want them out of the country. We can't treat them as illegals when we want to get them the fuck out of this country. According to the Huntsville Item newspaper, Leal's final words, oh, get this, guys, were, "I have hurt a lot of people. I know Christ has forgiven me, and I accept his forgiveness. I am sorry for the victim's family for what I did. May they forgive me. Let's get this show on the road, Warden." Leal still had one last statement to make before he died, much to the delight of his sister, Mary Angel Taylor, another illegal, who wept during the entire process. "Viva Mexico," Leal said before taking his last breath. And then he shouted again, "Viva Mexico." So you fucking tell me, They come into this country, live here as American citizens, live off of our system, the systems that our forefathers, grandparents had worked so hard to fucking build, and they still pledge loyalty to Mexico. Still. I got a big fucking problem with that. Because that tells me that we have terrorists right here in this fucking country. Who, if the shit hit the fan, they're going to be on the side of Mexico. They're not going to be on the side of North America. I can guarantee you that. Even during the recent soccer games with America versus Mexico, USA versus Mexico, there was division in our own fucking country. And you can imagine who they were rooting for. And even in our own country, from what I understand, the Americans that were rooting for the U.S. were given side eyes and looked at like they were nuts. There was tension. Because, God forbid, you should be living in America and you should be an American, North American citizen, and you go against Mexico. And you aren't rooting for Mexico. God for fucking bid, right? I'm sick of this shit. I'm sick of it. And no self-respecting American would condone this Obama administration BS. You don't see what's going on here in this country. You don't see what's going on around you. You must be blind. You must be blind. And even if you were Stevie Wonder, you would still know. You could still feel it. You would still know what's going on in this country. It's hard to deny. Because even Stevie Wonder, although he can't see what's going on, has to press 1 for fucking English.